Hi, so my name's Caitlyn, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer, a stage 1, grade 3 invasive ductal carcinoma in 2006 when I was 28, just after my 28th birthday. I had a mastectomy followed by chemotherapy along with hormonal treatments, and I was supposed to be on those for 5 years. However, about a year after chemo finished, I started looking into natural therapies and I stopped taking the hormonal suppressants. And then around 9 years later, when I was 37, in 2015, I was diagnosed with a breast cancer recurrence that was spread through my lymphatic system. It was on the chest wall and through the lymph sort of area under my underarm, up my neck. There was even things showing up in the groin area. The breast cancer cell lines, they were confirmed via biopsy. However, because of the unusual patterning of the lymph nodes, there was also suspicion that I may have had two malignancies. So I may have had breast cancer as well as a lymphoma. Um, and I was told that would have been due to the chemotherapy that I'd had 9 years earlier. Um, However, anyway, I declined further biopsies for that second diagnosis because I decided that regardless of whether or not it was also lymphoma, my treatment plan would be the same. And that was to remove toxicity and correct deficiencies. That was sort of the crux of it. My options in the conventional system were either palliative chemo or have my ovaries removed, to which I did neither. And I was told that without either of these treatments that I could expect to live around 2 years, and that was coming up to 8 years ago. So I'd been looking into holistic cancer therapy since I finished chemo, so around 9 years earlier. And what I discovered at the time was really quite mind-blowing, and actually it was pretty shocking. I had had such a traumatic experience with chemo, and in the years that followed, I vowed never to put my body through that again, should I ever have a recurrence. So at the time of the second diagnosis, I was so unwell that I would literally wake in the mornings and look in the mirror and just think that I looked like I was dying. Um, and having been through chemo already and the associated sickness, I just knew that there was no way that my body would survive that again, not in the state that it was in at that time. Um, so, and the other thing with my first experience with cancer, when I did do the conventional treatments, I was a patient and I really felt really hopeless and disempowered. I'm pretty depressed. The second time around, however, because I had done such a vast amount of research in the years sort of following the first diagnosis, I actually felt really empowered and that there was a lot more that was within my control. And so I really felt like I was stepping into my own power and steering my own ship because I was armed with knowledge and I was fully informed with a huge amount of options. So the first thing that I did was to sell my business. I was running a small business at the time. This is of the second diagnosis. And I was constantly stressed out. I knew that I had to radically change my life again. Um, so I moved interstate to stay with my family so that I could focus on healing full time. That was to become my full-time job. And in that time, I did extended water only fasting, and I discovered that I had a really bad parasite infection. I literally starved them out. And so that in itself was a light bulb moment. And I started looking into the relationship between parasites and candida and fungal infections and those sorts of things being at the root of many chronic illnesses. Um, I went to the Oasis of Hope Hospital in Mexico and I had ozone therapy because it wasn't available here in Australia. And I also had the dendritic cell vaccine, whereby they take an amount of your blood, and basically they harvest the dendritic cells, which are a type of natural killer cell. They isolate them and then grow even more in a petri dish, transfuse them back in so they get to work around your body and start taking care of the cancer cells and anything that shouldn't be there as natural killer cells too. I also did a series of IV vitamin C with other micronutrients, and I did both therapeutic and mild hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I should add in that on one particular water fast, I was spending about an hour every day over 7 days in the mild hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And that was also another, I passed a lot of worms then as well. And it was moments like that I really noticed that my health began to sort of turn around. However, as my savings depleted, which they rapidly did, I bought myself a biomat and I did my own at-home sauna therapy to try and replicate hypothermia. So a biomat is an infrared heat mat. So I'd wrap myself up sort of like a burrito with a sleeping bag and a hot water bottle and have literally rivers of sweat. So I was really like heating up my body as much as I could without being, doing actual hypothermia treatment. I ate huge amounts of salads every day, a lot of raw foods, and I drank probably close to 2 liters of vegetable juice most days. And also, probably about the same in water as well, if not more. I also, for a period, I took high strength THC cannabis oil daily, and I did really large doses of proteolytic enzymes. I did a lot of coffee enemas, and as well as a variety of different herbs and essential oils that I sort of discovered along the way. I bounced on a mini trampoline daily, and I got into yoga and really into meditation. And more recently, I've been doing transformational breath work for emotional healing with my psychologist, as well as some other mind body energy medicine techniques. So I did everything naturally and according to my own protocol that I sort of set up for myself based on a lot of my readings. However, halfway through, I had the silicone implant from the reconstructed breast removed that I had put in 2006. And then whilst I was under, I also had one problematic lymph node removed as well. And when I came out of that surgery, I felt like a fog that I didn't even know that I had lifted. So it was another really big turning point in terms of my health turning around. So from the time of the second diagnosis, when my body was an absolute mess, to the time of the explant surgery, it was about 3 years of full-time dedicated healing. And over the course of those 3 years, I would estimate that I spent probably somewhere around the $30,000 mark, which really over 3 years is pretty good. If you were to average that out, that's only 10 grand a year. However, I would note that I wasn't working, so yes, it's good in one sense, but not so good because that was all outgoings and no incomings. Yeah, but as I said, when I ran out of money, I focused really on fasting. I did a lot of water fasting. I did intermittent fasting, and I followed a sort of a pseudo keto diet. I wasn't measuring ketones or anything of that nature, but I was definitely doing high fat, low carb food, mainly vegetarian. along with, yeah, probably 10 to 15 IV infusions, hyperbaric oxygen, organic produce, and lots of herbs and supplements. And I found out about these therapies just after the first diagnosis, along along before the second one. And honestly, I can't say if they were hard to find or not the first time, as doing anything else but the standard conventional treatments wasn't even on my radar. So I wasn't looking for them. When I told my original oncologist that I'd stopped the tamoxifen and the Zoladex, she tried really hard to talk me out of it. But later, when I had the second diagnosis, I was linked in with an oncologist in the first instance, which is how I ordered the scans, etc., and all of those things. And she initially told me that I'd have 2 years of that conventional treatment. However, all the treatment protocols that she was suggesting was actually palliative chemo anyway. And she agreed to see me for a follow-up. And a year later, when I went back to her, most of the tumours had actually um, shrunk significantly, if not disappeared entirely. So she was genuinely shocked and was genuinely really happy for me and just told me to keep doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I do believe that the most effective intervention for me was the fasting, particularly the water fasting. As I said, I starved out a lot of a parasite infection, a lot of worms that I wasn't even aware that I had. And also during that fasting time, obviously the autophagy is taking place, so it's breaking down um, tumors, and also it just allowed my gut to repair. And as we now know that some 80% of your immune system actually lies within your gut. So fasting was huge. Fasting was really, really a real biggie for me, for sure. And I also did a lot of juice fasts as well as water fasts. So, and I would mix them up. So I did, 7 days of water, then I would do 7 days of juice, then sort of flip back and back and back, and then introduce food again, but like mainly focusing on raw foods and smoothies and things of that nature. And again, of course, I did, go back to, my sort of whole food diet and cooked foods and whatever, but just sort of those intensive fasting periods, the focus was really on um, really big amounts of nutrition, lots of hydration, and really gut healing. Yeah. So I think it's an absolute travesty that not only are many of these treatments and interventions and complementary approaches not well known, but so many of them are just discounted as quackery. I think that isn't, it's tragic, especially as someone who has been on the other side of the fence, someone who's gone through the treatment, through chemotherapy and just through those really, really harsh, um, toxic treatments. I just think, yeah, it's an absolute travesty that it's not more well known, and um, and that it's just so frowned upon. Um, I think I am different to the average cancer patient, as I had spent almost a decade learning about natural health and researching integrative, alternative, and suppressed cancer treatments. So when I had the second diagnosis, there was really no question in my mind what I would do. And also, I had the previous experience with chemotherapy, which, in all honesty, it's amazing that I survived that at all. And I did. I swore a long time ago that I would never put my body through those treatments again, no matter what, just because I was so sick. I had to have a lot of blood transfusions. I spent a lot of time in isolation because I was, you know, really, really neutropenic and very, very unwell. I think tonsillitis nearly killed me a couple of times. And so yeah, it was a really horrible experience. And when I had that second diagnosis, I knew that there was absolutely no way my body would have survived more toxicity of that nature. So it wasn't even a question for me. It was always going to be holistic treatments. And even, and I didn't have a lot of money, but I discovered fasting, and I really just I figured it out along the way. I, talked to a lot of people. I was in, different online forums, talking to other survivors, other people who are healing at the same time. Um, so yes, there's not a lot of support, I suppose, in the conventional sort of mainstream world, but there is actually a lot of support, and there is a lot of hope out there. There's a lot of people who want to share their stories and want people to know, just like I do, that there is hope. Um, and healing cancer, it's like healing any other chronic illness. It's you need high amounts of nutrition, and you need to get rid of, toxicity of every kind, whether it's physical, environmental, emotional, spiritual, whatever that is. So yes, definitely a whole person approach. One of the profound realizations I had very early on in this journey is that cancer is a wake-up call. So it's literally your body's way of getting your attention. It's telling you that the way that you are living is making you sick. You're killing yourself. And once I understood how the body works and about the mind-body connection and the causes of cancer, I knew what I had to do, and that was essentially to remove all the causes of cancer or anything that may have contributed to the disease. And I firmly believe that we don't need to find a cure because we already know what the causes are. And so we need to eliminate the causes and focus on um, rebuilding and creating health. Um, so taking those steps, taking an honest look at the way we're living, the way we conduct our lives, looking, removing the causes and really focus on building health. It's the only way. And when I started to really detox my body, mind, and emotions and nourish my body, my mind, and my spirit, my entire world began to shift for the better. My physical, emotional, and mental health, they all improved. And I cultivated a connection with the intelligence that's within all of us. And I think when we feel connected to something bigger than us, and you can call it God, nature, source, grand organized design, God, whatever you call it, whatever that is for you, you know that you're a part of something bigger, a part of a greater consciousness, and that you are having a human experience.